I am so excited to share with you that Serialously is officially hitting the road and coming to you live in a city near you. That's right, we are going on tour. We've got shows planned in Orange County, California, San Diego, California, Salt Lake City, Denver, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona, and more. We're going to be discussing all new exclusive cases. I have some surprise guests planned, but I can't tell you who. It's a surprise. At the end, we'll do a meet and greet, so I finally get to meet so many of you. We've got exclusive merch and just so much more. It is going to be a show that you definitely do not want to miss. But space and tickets are very, very limited, so grab your friends, grab your coworkers, or come on your own and hang with me while we talk all things true crime together. All of the information, including dates, cities, and links to purchase tickets, can be found at annieelise.com and then just toggle over to the events page. So grab them now before they're gone. I can't wait to meet all of you, and I will see you on the stage. Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of 10 to Life with me, Annie Elise. All right, I'm going to get comfy here. Let me actually take my shoes off. Let me get all comfy up here because because this particular case has been on my radar for a while. However, it's taken me a while to get everything together to really make it an episode that does the case justice and is as thorough as it can possibly be. So we've got a lot of details to dive into. We've got a lot to unpack. That's why I'm trying to get comfy here with you, because we're going to be together for a minute. But I want to go over with you not only why this case is incredibly interesting and you following along through it and getting all of the details right, but even more than that, why it's incredibly infuriating. So let's jump right in. Okay, so I normally go to bed around, 7:30 or 8. It's only 5:30 right now, as you can see, but I have to get the kids' meals ready for dinner, so I'm gonna prepare my sleep tea right now. Now, I've been talking to you guys about this forever, but I drink it every single night, so much so that I ended up doing my own custom collab with them on my own flavor, which is the perfect blend of sea salt caramel and chocolate sweetness. And we're almost out of stock, so if you haven't grabbed yours yet, now's the time because it's gonna be gone forever. So what you do is you take 1 scoop of Beam, put it in your cup, then you can either mix with water or milk. I personally like water. Pour your hot water in, stir, and go. Now, because I'm mixing this ahead of time, I probably will need to warm it up, but still, I just want to be prepared tonight. Now, I've also told you guys before that I wear an Oura ring, which tracks my sleep. Anytime I don't drink my Beam sleep tea, my sleep scores are in the literal garbage, and then when I do drink it, I'm back to in the high 90s, optimal sleep. So it just shows you the proof is in the science, the proof is in the technology, it definitely helps you sleep better. And so many of you guys have tried Beam since I first started mentioning them earlier this year, and you have told me in your reviews that you love it, that it's helped you, that nothing has helped you. And one of the best things about Beam is that it's not like other sleep aids where you wake up feeling groggy the next day. You actually feel so energized. It has the perfect blend of magnesium, L-theanine, reishi, all of the great things. It's also only 15 calories and 0 grams of added sugar. So, I mean, it's like a guilt-free sweet treat right before bed because it literally tastes like a cup of yummy hot chocolate. And it definitely has actually broken my habit of needing a glass of milk and cookies every single night before I go to sleep because I've been doing that for years, ever since I was pregnant, and apparently I'm Santa Claus. But now I don't need to do that because I have my Beam. But like I said, my exclusive blend, the Salty Dark Chocolate Caramel Dream, is almost sold out, so this is your last chance to grab it. Click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use my code 10TOLIFE to get up to 40% off. All right, I'm gonna go get these kids fed and then I am off to bed. Sweet dreams. In 2001, Andrew Bagby was 28 years old, and I will just say this, right now, he was kind of like a miracle that he was even alive at all. He was born in Wichita, Kansas, after his parents, Kate and David, had met earlier in Long Beach, California, right up the road from where I live. Kate was a registered nurse and also a midwife who traveled all over the world for work, and in the 60s, she found herself in California. So one day, Kate and another nurse wanted to go to Disneyland, but they weren't really sure how to get there. So they ended up stopping at a local business and asking for help. The person who ended up helping her was David. He actually agreed to take Kate to Disneyland and to show her around. Now, during this trip, they discovered that they got along really well. Now, Kate was a tiny woman. She had short dark hair, glasses, but despite her size, she had a huge personality. She also was definitely not somebody that you would ever want to mess with. She was very smart, very lively, and just a very determined person. The type of person who always stood up for, the little guy, the underdog, anything like that. Now, when Kate met David, he was working for the U.S. Navy. He was tall, he had dark hair, glasses, just like her. Also, like Kate, he was very intelligent. He was logical, he was straightforward. I mean, they were kind of like two peas in a pod, right? So Kate and David got along so well together that they ended up getting married just 5 months after meeting one another. David and Kate then moved to San Diego, and Kate kept working as a nurse, and David started working as a software engineer after he left the Navy. The two of them desperately wanted children too, so they started trying to get pregnant right away, right after they got married. However, years went by and they weren't having any luck, which was taking a toll on them emotionally, as you can imagine. They were devastated, and they started believing that maybe kids just weren't in the cards for them, at least maybe not in the traditional way. So instead of giving up on the idea altogether, they started looking into alternative options. They became pretty dead set on adopting, too, until something completely unexpected happened. Kate became pregnant. Now, this happens a lot, more than you would actually think, but where you can be thinking of adoption and then bam, you're pregnant and you weren't ever expecting it in a million years. So the couple and their families, they were extremely excited. The child was like their little miracle baby. The pregnancy also went pretty smoothly. Andrew was 2 weeks late, but overall, he was healthy, he was happy, and he was just a little cute, smiling cherub little baby. So eventually, the family of 3 moved to a suburb of San Jose, California. And Andrew spent the majority of his childhood there. Then as Andrew got older, he ended up going to the UK for the summer to spend time with his mom's side of the family. Andrew was super outgoing, he was friendly, people just loved him, his looks matched his personality. He was a stocky guy with dark hair, but he had these little rosy cheeks and he was always smiling, and everybody always just thought that he was truly the life of the party. Andrew was also involved in the Boy Scouts from a very young age, and he received his Eagle Scout badge at the age of 15, which is extremely impressive because becoming an Eagle Scout is a very, very difficult challenge. Only about 5% of Boy Scouts even reach that ranking. The process is very long, and you have to get a certain number of badges. Then you also have to complete this big community service project. You have to hold leadership positions and so much more. The entire process can take up to 6 years, and most people don't even reach that rank until they're 17 years old. So the fact that Andrew did it when he was just 15 years old, I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? Andrew had a lifelong best friend named Kurt, and the two boys were friends from a very, very young age. They spent a lot of time together throughout their entire lives. Kurt was a movie buff who had this knack for creating these amateur home movies that Andrew would often act in, like a traditional kid and young adult type of hobby, but where they would just kind of make these movies together. Andrew was a very lively person, so he was perfect for acting. Plus, as Kurt and Andrew got older, the movies became more intense, and Andrew loved playing those bad guy roles. He loved that the roles gave him an excuse to curse, to smoke, to not get in trouble with his parents but live on the edge. His parents even starred in some of these movies too. Now, aside from acting in Kurt's movies, and home movies if you will, Andrew bonded with his dad over photography. However, he never really showed the pictures to anybody. He mostly kept that hobby to himself, very protective and very guarded. Not because he was embarrassed of it, but because it was something just so special and so personal. Andrew also loved to play pool. People would call him a pool shark. He would almost always win. And in an interesting detail about him too, which it just kind of goes back to who he is as a person and what made him tick and all of his characteristics, but he never wore pants. Only shorts, even when it was super cold outside. He also would bite his fingernails almost down to nothing, just kind of giving you a picture of who he was. So after graduating high school, Andrew went to college, and that's when he started dating a girl named Heather Arnold. The two of them eventually got engaged. After undergrad, Andrew had dreamed of following in his mother's footsteps and going into the medical field, so he was determined to go to medical school. And he got into very deep discussions about medicine and similar topics with his mom all the time. This was something that he was so passionate about. The problem was, Andrew applied to a ton of different medical schools, but he didn't get into any of them. He was devastated because his entire future had really revolved around this dream. So he felt lost and almost like his entire life now had to be put on hold. Andrew was typically a very happy guy, the life of the party, right? But these rejections, they caused him a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. He felt like he wasn't living up to different expectations, and he felt like he was disappointing not only himself, but also his friends and family as well. So he planned on getting a job, studying, and applying for medical school again the following year. But then something really surprising happened. His mom discovered a letter that had gotten lost in the mail, and it was an acceptance letter from the Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada. So Andrew was stoked, and he made his way to the town of St. John's in Newfoundland, Canada around 1995 or 1996. His fiancée Heather also moved there with him. She was going to go to the Memorial University for medical school as well. However, in an unforeseen turn of events, after their first year, Heather ended up breaking off the engagement for unknown reasons. And Andrew took that breakup pretty hard and had a very difficult time coping. He kept going to class, and he spent time, as much as possible at least, with his friends, trying to keep distracted, but he just wasn't the same. He had low self-esteem, he was very down on himself, and this just wasn't like him at all. But then in the spring of 1999, during his third year of medical school, he started dating a new woman named Shirley Turner. Now, this was really the first relationship that he had after Heather, and at first, his friends were all happy to see him moving on. Like, finally, it's been a couple years, get back out there, we're happy to see you're happy. Shirley was also a student at Memorial University, which is how she and Andrew met in the first place. Shirley had been born in Canada, but she was raised in Wichita, Kansas. She had moved back to Canada with her mom when her parents divorced. Now, Shirley was also quite a bit older than Andrew. A cougar, if you will. I don't want to say cougar, but you get what I mean. Because when they met, she was 38 years old, and Andrew was only 26. Shirley had originally graduated from Memorial University with a degree in education and was also a science teacher for a few years in the 80s. Eventually, though, she went back to the university for medical school, and she graduated in 1998. After graduation, she worked as a resident physician at various hospitals in the area. Now, Shirley didn't have the best reputation as a resident physician. Her supervisor said that she often became hostile and that she would yell, cry, and even accuse others of treating her poorly. She also missed multiple days of work and even falsified medical reports. One patient that she worked with even refused to go back to the hospital after an appointment with her. And that didn't look like it was going to get any better because Shirley, she just could not take feedback at all, especially constructive criticism. Her outbursts were so bad that her supervisors eventually avoided giving her any kind of constructive criticism. And in a review of Shirley, one of her supervisors at the hospital wrote, "I felt I was being manipulated whenever I spoke with Shirley Turner. When negative items would come up, she would change the topic to one of my failings. She could be charming, friendly, and lively, but when caught in an untruth, she would become angry, accusatory, and loud. I always felt that Shirley Turner was putting on a show as if she were playing the role but had no feeling for her work. I cannot recall a trainee like Shirley Turner in that her approach lacked personal commitment, and her relationships with people seemed, at least to me, to be superficial when compared to the other over 400 residents that I have supervised." I mean, not exactly a glowing review, right? So for many reasons, Andrew's friends could not understand why he was dating Shirley. She was older than him, she had been divorced twice already, she had 3 kids, she also didn't seem like that great of a person. Plus, it was like one day she just appeared in Andrew's life and then never left his side. She was with Andrew all the time. If Andrew's friends saw Andrew, they were sure to see Shirley as well. And Shirley was kind of just like weird. Whenever Shirley and Andrew were together, she would just be all over him, like hugging him, touching him, groping him, and just kind of basically like crawling on top of him. And then to make things even more awkward, she was always making these lewd sexual comments around Andrew's friends. In the most inappropriate moments too, she would just talk about her and Andrew's sex life and just make people feel uncomfortable. Then there was also the fact that Shirley was very possessive. She knew about Andrew's ex-fiancée, Heather, and she started obsessing over her. Shirley would harass Heather. She would call her over and over again just to tell Heather all about her and Andrew's sex life, which is so beyond weird and gross when you think about it. If I was getting calls from my husband or even boyfriend at the time's ex, telling me about, or girlfriend telling me about their sex life, I'd be like, great, do you, this is so weird, So suffice to say, none of Andrew's friends liked Shirley at all. They thought that the only reason that he was even with her was because he had such low self-esteem, and that his self-esteem had been so low since his breakup with Heather. His friends would tell him that he could do better all the time, but Andrew said he couldn't. He even called himself short, he called himself portly all the time, and he said that Shirley was really the best that he was ever going to get. So eventually Andrew graduated, and then in 2000 he moved to Syracuse, New York to start a medical residency in surgery. Shirley also moved to the United States, but she went to Sac City, Iowa. She signed a 10-year contract to work for a company called Trimark Physicians Corporation. So Andrew and Shirley did it the long-distance thing. They were dating long distance. But Shirley was more invested in the relationship than Andrew was. Andrew rarely took the time to go visit her, but Shirley went to see Andrew quite a lot, all the time. And when they weren't together, Shirley would just call him over and over and over again. She'd call his home phone, then his cell phone, then his home phone again, then his cell phone again. Back and forth. You get the idea. Once, Shirley even went to go visit Andrew, and at the end of the visit, Andrew had to leave for work, and Shirley left around the same time to drive back to Iowa. However, shortly after she left, she called Andrew and said she forgot a few things at his house, that she was going to turn around, get them, since she had a key. But when Andrew got home that evening, he found that a lot of his personal belongings were missing, not just the stuff that she claimed to have forgotten. His laptop, several movies, his music collection, they were all gone. And Andrew knew who had taken them. It had to be Shirley, right? So by this point, Andrew was starting to get pretty tired of this relationship. But for whatever reason, he stayed. And needless to say, he didn't report the theft, he didn't press charges, he didn't do anything against his girlfriend. However, Andrew quickly realized that surgery and Syracuse weren't for him. He did not like his new job at all, and he didn't like Syracuse anymore either. He had a pretty difficult time, and after about a year, he ended up moving to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. It was now 2001, and he decided that he wanted to start studying family medicine at the local hospital. Latrobe was perfect for Andrew. It was a small, tight-knit community, and Andrew had always dreamed of being a small-town doctor. The doctor that everybody knows, everybody trusts, and everybody takes their children to. He wanted to work in a place where he could literally just walk down the street and people would know him. And he made a name for himself pretty quickly. Even though he was only in his residency, his patients loved him, and they loved him so much that they started calling the hospital asking for appointments with him specifically. Latrobe was everything that Andrew wanted. So he was gaining his confidence back, and he even kind of ended his relationship with Shirley. She had actually moved to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and for whatever reason, she started working for another healthcare company, even though she was still supposed to be under this contract with Trimark. But either way, by now, Andrew was confident, and he was completely sick of Shirley. She expected Andrew to invite her to move to Latrobe to be with him, but he did the exact opposite. He basically told her, hey, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I'm out. I'm done. But Shirley was not having it. She started calling him constantly. She would call his home phone, his cell phone, his home phone again, like the same pattern over and over again. The calls were constant. And in one instance, she left over 30 voicemails in just one day. 30. Can you say stage 5 clinger? 30 voicemails in one day. Even if you're going to be unhinged and call that many times on repeat. I've had my fair share of drunk dialing in the day. You don't leave 30 voicemails. You are going to look cuckoo. Get it together. But then it escalated even more. And in September of 2001, Shirley told Andrew that she was pregnant with his child. She also announced this to basically any other woman that she thought that he was getting too close to. So if he made a new female friend and Shirley decided that that woman was a threat, she would literally call them up and say, oh, by the way, your new friend is the father of my child, trying to mark her territory. She even called Heather, Andrew's ex-fiancée from years earlier, and told her the news. She initially told Heather that she was going to end the pregnancy, but then later she said that she decided to keep the baby. So even though Shirley was now pregnant, Andrew still kept his distance from her. She was obviously trying to use this baby as an excuse for them to, get back together, but Andrew was not giving in. And even though their relationship was over, Shirley did attend a wedding with Andrew in late October of 2001 because he had invited her to this wedding as the +1 before they had broken up. And Shirley was acting really weird during the wedding. She was jumping on Andrew, she was acting possessive of him like she always did, and she was just being weird. Now, Shirley was supposed to fly home to Iowa that following Saturday, November 3rd, 2001. Before her flight, she and Andrew were eating lunch at the airport. Andrew asked her about the pregnancy, and she revealed that she wasn't actually pregnant. She had made the entire thing up, which I know, insanity, right? So as you can imagine, Andrew was furious. He said, "Yo, I am completely done with you. I want nothing to do with you at all anymore. I don't even want to be friends with you." So he put her on that plane back to Iowa, and he hoped that his life would just go back to normal, especially now that Shirley was officially 1,000 miles away. But he was not that lucky, because 2 days later on November 5th, Shirley came over to his house early in the morning, even though she had just flown back to Iowa a couple of days earlier. And apparently she literally just showed up unannounced and she started pounding on his door. It was loud enough to wake him up. He didn't want to let her in, but she just would not leave and she would not stop knocking. So finally he gave in, kind of like, "Just shut up, just get inside, like, what is going on?" She wanted to talk, but he had to leave and go to work. So he said, "Look, I have to go to work, but you can stay at my house." But he didn't feel comfortable being alone with her whenever they had this conversation that she wanted to have. So he said he would meet her at a place called Keystone Park around 6 p.m., and once they met up there, they could talk. Now, when he got to work, Andrew was still kind of shaken. He was clearly bothered by this entire thing. And one of his coworkers, Clark, noticed this. It was very unlike Andrew to be so visibly upset. So Clark asked him, "What's going on?" And Andrew said, "You'll never guess who showed up on my doorstep. The psychotic bitch." That's a direct quote. Not my words, his. So he explained everything that had happened that morning. And Clark told Andrew that he definitely should not meet up with Shirley at all, especially not on his own. I mean, clearly something wasn't right with this woman, and Clark even thought that Andrew should call the police. But instead, Andrew said that he was fine, that he would just swing by Clark's house after he was done with Shirley, that everything would be okay, and he told Clark he would probably be there around 7:30 p.m. or so. But by 9 o'clock that night, Andrew had not shown up. And Andrew wasn't just the sort of person to blow off plans with a friend. So Clark was pretty concerned, almost immediately. Something just felt wrong. However, he held on to the hope that he would see Andrew the following morning at work. But instead, the next morning on November 6th, Andrew did not show up for work in the morning. Again, this was completely unlike him. He was the type of guy who always showed up early. So him being late and then not even calling to say that he was going to be in even later, it was concerning. His coworkers called his house phone, also his cell phone, but he didn't answer either of them. By 9 a.m., they were extremely concerned. So they gathered in the break room, tried to figure out what to do, and then the news came on. That's when they saw the announcement that a body that was wearing scrubs had been found in Keystone Park, that exact same place where Andrew had been meeting with Shirley the night before. And a little while later, a police officer arrived at the hospital and they asked for everybody to gather in the conference room. The officers announced that the body that they had found was Andrew. He was dead. He'd been found in a parking lot in Keystone Park near his parked car, a Toyota Corolla. He had been shot 5 times, twice in the butt and once in the face, the chest, and the back of the head. He had been discovered by a homeless person who was searching for cans, aluminum cans, around 6 a.m. And by then, his body was covered in a slight frost, and there were 6 spent shell casings and 1 live round right there on the ground beside him. So right away, Clark told the police that they aren't going to have to look far to figure out who had done this. He told them all about Shirley, all about her surprise visit the day before, and how Andrew was supposed to go meet up with her. So with that information, the police called Shirley, and they asked her where she had been the previous day. But Shirley said that she had been home, in Iowa. She was sick the entire day. She spent the whole day just lying in her bed.
Even though I was homesick at 7.
When did you last talk to him?
I think it was Sunday, and I'm not going to lie to you.
But the police didn't believe her. In their short discussions with Andrew's friends and coworkers, they knew that Andrew and Shirley's relationship was odd. Plus, a man came forward and said that he saw 2 cars in the Keystone parking lot on November 5th, and that he saw them around 6:10 p.m., right around that time that Andrew told Clark he was going to go and meet Shirley. One car was a Toyota Corolla, and the other car was a Toyota SUV, the exact car that Shirley drove. So over the next 2 weeks, police gathered more evidence, and it was not looking good for Shirley. First, they found that Shirley had logged into her eBay account and her Hotmail account from Andrew's computer, and that she had done this on November 5th, which would fit the idea of her being alone at his house during the day that afternoon. She also used his landline to call in sick to work. So, if you're all the way there, calling in and using his server and IP address, clearly you're not in Iowa. You're not thousands of miles away, sick in bed. They also searched Shirley's apartment in Iowa, and there they found a box of condoms from Andrew's house. The serial number matched a box that Andrew bought in Latrobe, which, what? They also discovered that Shirley had recently purchased a .22 caliber gun. She had had 3 lessons with a gun safety instructor. So then the police interviewed this instructor, and he said that Shirley's gun had a very weird malfunction where it would sometimes eject live rounds. So that could explain why there was a live round found right on the ground near Andrew's body. The instructor also said that Shirley used those same bullets that were found inside Andrew's body. So some detectives decided, you know what, we're going to ask Shirley about this gun.
I'm not going to kid you, Doctor.
I know.
I'm interested in the gun. And you just bought the gun, right? Not too long ago?
Yeah, well, I have it for protection.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm just
and I
curious.
wanted to know for safety. And I thought instruction was a good thing.
I agree. Would you be willing to turn the gun into your local police department so they could get it to us to let us look at it?
Yes, it's either in my closet or my bedroom, or it's in the car.
So yeah, when it was time to actually hand the gun over, she claimed she couldn't find it. And as if this evidence wasn't damning enough, Shirley's cell phone records proved that she was not in bed sick on November 5th. Not at all. In fact, they showed that Shirley made several calls between November 4th and November 5th, which all pinged off of a tower in Chicago. One was at 7:08 p.m., and then another was at 7:10. Then at 10:19 p.m., she made another call from Indiana. The next morning, November 5th, she made a call from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So if you look on a map and you trace the route from Shirley's apartment in Iowa to Andrew's home in Latrobe, there is a straight line through all of those cities. So to the police, it was pretty clear Shirley drove all the way from Council Bluffs, Iowa, to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Then, late at night on November 5th, she made 5 calls from Cleveland, Ohio. Then another call from Iowa the following morning, November 6th. When she got home to Council Bluffs, she called Andrew and she left him a message.
Hey Andrew, it's me. I thought I might catch you home lunchtime, but I guess you're around. Anyway, just thought I'd say hi. Haven't talked to you in the past couple of days. Love you, bye.
So to the police, it was pretty clear that Shirley did fly home to Iowa on November 3rd. But then, late at night on November 4th, she started the long drive from Iowa to Pennsylvania. She made numerous calls before showing up at Andrew's home on November 5th. She, bang, 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 knocked on his door. Andrew let her come inside and stay while he was at work. She stole the box of condoms for whatever reason, used his computer, used his phone, and then she went and met Andrew at Keystone Park at around 6 p.m. She used her gun to shoot him. Then she drove all through the night back to Iowa before arriving at home early the following morning. So the police called Shirley again, and they told her, hey, we know you weren't sick at home on November 5th. They knew that she had driven from Iowa to Pennsylvania. They knew that she had met Andrew in that parking lot of Keystone Park. They knew that she had a gun with her. So now, Shirley's story changed. She said, yes, I did meet Andrew at Keystone Park. And while, yes, I did have my gun with me, I gave it to Andrew, and I saw him put this gun in the trunk of his car. Maybe somebody used my gun and shot Andrew later on. According to Shirley, it wasn't her, though.
I've tried to be as honest as I can remember. Even now, I guess I'm racking my brain for techniques. Where was I here and there? Because I didn't expect I had to come up with all of this.
But the police weren't buying this story. They were just about ready to arrest Shirley, But in the meantime, they wanted to double check the information from the cell phone towers that Shirley's phone, had pinged from, just to make sure all of their information was right, that the entire investigation was airtight. While they were getting everything together, Andrew's memorial service was held. His parents, Kate and David, were absolutely devastated. Andrew had been their miracle child their entire life. They were having a really difficult time coping, and Andrew's friends were trying to take care of them as much as they possibly could. Andrew's parents had been like parents to all of Andrew's friends. Many of them felt like they had been raised by them. So his friends brought them food, they made a schedule to make sure that somebody was always with them, really going above and beyond to make his parents feel supported. They wanted them to know that even though Andrew was gone, they still had, children who loved them. And what's weird is Shirley was at this memorial service too, which maybe that's not so weird because she did seem like, a stalker of sorts. But again, she was acting weird the entire time. She was wailing loudly, almost to the point where it seemed fake, like she was doing it all for show, just super performative. And then after the service, Shirley confronted Andrew's ex-fiancée, Heather. Once again, just could not let this go. After all of the harassment that she had already faced, Heather was pretty scared of Shirley too, rightfully so. Her friends also tried to kind of shield her from Shirley during the entire service, but Shirley still came up to her, and she started saying some really awful things. She told Heather that she was a terrible person, that Andrew cared about her more, that their love life had been so much better, and now that Andrew was gone, their love would live on forever. Just like this weird territorial kind of stuff. And then, not long after the memorial service, Shirley fled from the United States off to Canada. She went to stay in St. John's with her oldest son, which obviously, of course, made it more difficult for the police in the United States to finish their case and arrest her. Andrew's family planned to hold another memorial service for him in California, and they purposefully invited Shirley because they were trying to lure her back to the United States. The problem was it didn't work, and Shirley did not accept the invitation. So instead, the police in Pennsylvania had to work with the Canadian authorities so that they could arrest Shirley. It was going very slow too, and she kept living life in the meantime. She eventually got her own apartment, the police closely monitored her movements, but there wasn't much that they could do. However, eventually, on December 12, 2001, Shirley was arrested. Unfortunately, it would take even longer, though, for her to be extradited to the United States. People expected her to stay in Canadian jail until she was transferred back to the U.S., but that didn't happen either. In fact, on the same day that she was arrested, she was released on bail. Her judge, Gail Welsh, released her on the following conditions. She would pay a $75,000 bond, turn in her passport, sign in once a week at a police station, and also avoid contact with a list of 8 people, some of whom actually had restraining orders against her. Andrew's parents and his ex-fiancée Heather were also on that list. The judge said that as long as Shirley met those conditions, she would be free to walk the streets until she was extradited to the United States. Now what's interesting is Shirley's psychiatrist, Dr. John, helped pay Shirley's bond. She also agreed to all the other conditions, so because of that, poof, she was released. Now, as you can imagine, people were furious. This woman had murdered somebody. She had committed a violent crime. Why was she being allowed to essentially just walk free? Wasn't she a danger to society? Well, according to Judge Welsh, no, she wasn't. Yes, Shirley had committed a violent crime, but the judge said that Shirley's crime was personal and that she had no reason to hurt anyone else. She wasn't worried about Shirley being violent again because Shirley didn't have a history of violence except for this one instance. Which, how backwards is that, right? Even if it was personal and a crime of passion, being able to walk free gives you the opportunity to hurt the people that you've previously stalked and harassed, like Heather. It gives you the opportunity to flip out and become emotionally attached to somebody else and hurt them. It gives you the opportunity to hurt yourself so that you don't have to be held responsible. Feels pretty reckless, right? And if Judge Welsh had actually done a little bit of digging on Shirley, she would have discovered that she did have a huge history of violence, and she had a concerning history in general. Shirley had been married twice before meeting Andrew. She had 2 children with her first husband, then cheated on him with the guy who eventually became her second husband. They had another child, her third, before they ended up getting divorced. In 1993, Shirley had a roommate living with her and her 3 children, and that roommate was absolutely appalled at how Shirley treated her kids. She would beat them with different objects, often belts. The roommate was apparently so disturbed by it that he ended up moving out even rather than sticking around and having to witness all of it and continue. Luckily, the roommate also reported all of this and reported Shirley's behavior to the psychiatrist at the university where she was enrolled. So that psychiatrist filed a report with social services, and Shirley's children ended up confirming everything. They said that Shirley would hit them and then leave them home completely unattended to for days on end. However, social services also interviewed Shirley's second husband, and he claimed that Shirley didn't hit the kids, that she only ever used that belt as a threat. Also, social services never actually interviewed Shirley herself, so the case was dropped in January of 1994. That same year, Shirley went to medical school and basically just stopped taking care of her kids altogether. She tried to pawn them off on various family members, but they all refused to care for them. So Shirley ended up giving the kids to their respective fathers and just left, bailed out. But there were other red flags too. In March, Shirley started dating a classmate. Eventually, the guy broke up with Shirley and moved away, but Shirley somehow managed to find him. And when she did, she attacked him with one of her high-heel shoes and hit him in the jaw. The guy moved away again, but in true Shirley fashion, she would call him over and over and over again, and eventually she discovered where he lived. On several occasions, she showed up at his apartment and would have these very violent emotional outbursts and physically would attack him. Once, she showed up and refused to even leave this guy's apartment for an entire month. He had to call the police to get her to leave, and he told the police that he was worried about what she might do to him next. Eventually, he came home one day and he found Shirley passed out by his front door. She had taken multiple over-the-counter pills. She was semi-unconscious. She was also wearing a black dress, holding roses, and had 2 handwritten letters. One was addressed to him. The other was addressed to her psychiatrist. And in the letter to the psychiatrist, she wrote, "I'm not evil, just sick." Shirley was rushed to the hospital and survived. But the next day, this guy got a voicemail saying Dr. Turner died last night. Now, of course, Shirley wasn't dead. It was just another manipulation tactic that she was trying to use to control him. A lot, I know, and I don't know about you, but it just seems to me like Shirley just did not want to let people go. And it also seems like Shirley didn't just have a one-off lapse in judgment when she stalked Andrew. This was a pattern. And if the judge had done a little more of a background check on Shirley, maybe she would have realized that it wasn't the best idea to just let her roam the streets. In fact, shortly after Shirley was released on bond, she held a press conference where she announced that she was 4 months pregnant with Andrew's baby. Now, it couldn't be proven that this baby was actually Andrew's until he was born. But when Andrew's parents heard this, they immediately made plans to move to Canada. They sold everything, they blew through their savings, they planned it to go to Canada and fight tooth and nail for custody of this child. And as it turns out, on July 18th, 2002, Zachary Andrew Turner was born, and a DNA test confirmed that this baby was Andrew's. After his birth, Kate and David tried to visit him in the hospital, but Shirley would not let them inside. Shirley's extradition hearing, meanwhile, was taking forever, so she was still allowed to walk free and take care of little Zachary. So now you have a woman who has 3 other children that she has essentially abandoned. She's also murdered somebody. So how is she allowed to have full custody of this baby? Make it make sense. Kate and David, Andrew's parents, felt terrible about this entire thing because they were essentially negotiating with the person who killed their son. Every time they were trying to arrange a visitation meeting, they were negotiating with a murderer. And every time it seemed like they were about to reach an agreement, Shirley would just bring up something frivolous to delay things. But finally, they did work out a custody deal. Kate and David were allowed to see Zachary for 1 hour per week during a supervised visit. In this visit, they would have to be fully searched beforehand, and Shirley would be in the room right next to them. Now, this wasn't exactly what Kate and David wanted, but it was a start. They just wanted to meet Zachary. They were so excited to be grandparents. It was as though their son Andrew was living on with them. Finally, in November of 2002, Shirley was ordered to go to jail until her extradition to the United States. And while she was behind bars, she gave full custody of Zachary to Kate and David. However, with this, there were strings attached. Shirley would get 1 phone call every day to talk to David and Kate about how Zachary was doing, and David and Kate also had to drive to the jail every single week so that Shirley could see Zachary.
This is Alliant Telecom. You have a collect call from Shirley. You may press 1 now to accept the charges. Thank you.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah,
Are
hi.
you babysitting?
Just got up. He's a little bleary-eyed, but
It's
there you
very
go,
hot,
boss.
is it? Hi, sweetheart. Zachary, how is our baby today? Oh, my. Are you having a good day with Grandmama and Granddad? Zachary, I love you, baby. Mommy loves you. Mommy misses you. Christmas is coming, and you're getting all ready for Christmas. I hate every time I call you, I have to ask you guys a favor, but you're not supposed to know. This is a surprise. Surprise for you from Zachary. I don't know what to get Zachary. Some of those frames, even at the dollar stores, will say, there'll be little sayings on them. Like if you want to say Mommy and Daddy on a frame and stick a picture of me and Andrew in it. I don't know. Or, you know, Mommy with Baby. What about the one of me and Andrew? Did you have anywhere to put that? Or that
Not yet.
Not yet. Do you feel all right about putting that up? I mean,
Not quite yet.
yes, okay. Now, I want to ask you, how is Kate doing? I thought about her all night. I wrote her a long letter last night to try and make her feel better.
I think, I got to say it again.
Yes.
The details are too touchy for us to
know.
do like this. I think our lawyers should
Okay.
hammer them out.
It's almost amazing to me how well you guys are taking care of him the way I would be taking care of him. Even Randy Pierce, he was like, Shirley, are you sure you can trust these people? And I said, yes, I am. He said, do you really believe they love the child? I said, yes, as much as I do.
It was a 2-hour drive to the jail and a 2-hour drive back home. But David and Kate didn't care. They made that drive every single time, even in terrible weather, because they did not want to give Shirley any excuse to try and take Zachary away from them. But then, in January of 2003, Shirley was let out of jail again. She had run out of money and she couldn't afford her lawyer anymore, so this time she sent a handwritten letter to the judge who was in charge of her case, Judge Walsh. And she asked her for advice on how she could stay out of jail before being extradited to the U.S. Through her secretary, Judge Welsh sent a letter back, giving Shirley detailed advice on how to file for an appeal. She even made comments talking about how Shirley was so very smart because she was a doctor, so filing this appeal should be easy for her. So Shirley filed an appeal that argued that she should be released from jail so that she could care for Zachary. The prosecution argued that the appeal was frivolous. Multiple court-appointed lawyers read through it and they refused to represent Shirley because it was just so ridiculous. But in spite of all of that, the judge released Shirley, and she was once again free to walk the streets. She also gained custody of Zachary again. But this time, Kate and David were allowed to see him 3 to 4 times per week for multiple hours, and they even had an overnight visit every other week. These visits were also no longer supervised. But still, Kate and David were furious. I mean, from their perspective, it felt like this judge was fawning over Shirley, like she had some sort of weird connection with her. And when Judge Welsh decided to teach Shirley how to file an appeal and let her out, she never even asked them for their opinion on the matter. They were also angry because the judge continued to say that Shirley was not violent, that she had no indications of a psychological disorder, and that she wasn't a threat to the community, which obviously was just not true. Besides that background I talked about earlier, Shirley was almost constantly on self-harm watch while she was in jail. She was also very disruptive, difficult to deal with, and even threatened to stab another inmate with a fork. So clearly not this non-violent person that the judge made Shirley out to be. Nevertheless, David and Kate worked with Shirley, which I think just shows how great they were as people, because they were literally willing to deal with the woman who killed their son just so that one day they could receive custody over Zachary. They hated her, I mean, that's for sure, but they kept their feelings to themselves because they desperately wanted to see their grandson. They wanted the best for him. They spent all this time with Shirley, taking Zachary to the park, the pool, and just acting like everything was normal. They never brought up Andrew, they never brought up Shirley's crime, and they tried to maintain the peace as much as possible, which I can't even imagine how strong and resilient you have to be as a parent to do that. It's almost like you have to have tunnel vision, like, I'm doing what's best for our grandson, we're going to just fake it till we make it, but to be facing your son's murder every day, that has to be so incredibly difficult. Now, things were going pretty well between the three of them, I mean, all things considered. Like I said, Kate and David genuinely could not stand this woman. They despised her, and they compared her to the devil. But Shirley seemed to be okay with them being involved in Zachary's life. That is until she wasn't. See, Zachary was very attached to Kate. It was clear that Kate was his absolute favorite person in the world. And it was also clear that he did not really like being around Shirley all that much. So with Kate and David, he was always happy, he was always smiling. But with Shirley, he was often upset, uncomfortable, and would cry. Almost everyone who knew Zachary knew that he preferred almost anyone other than Shirley. And knowing that she used to physically hurt her past 3 children, it makes me wonder what was going on with Zachary when Kate and David weren't around. So I don't know if it was jealousy that her son didn't seem to like her, or if Shirley was just kind of giving into her mean streak, but she started making things difficult for Kate and David.
Sometimes you don't realize what you're saying. I think it was one time we were on the phone or something. And
Yeah, the baby cried. And I said,
yeah,
"Oh, there's my baby."
oh, my baby. And
Yeah, I mean, I can watch that for sure. It's not a problem.
that you aren't trying to take my place.
She would complain that she didn't have enough money to feed and diaper Zachary, but then she would try to refuse the cash from Kate and David. Instead, she would say that they had to leave the food and the diapers on her doorstep without her knowing. Then Shirley started saying that she wasn't sure if Zachary was okay when he was with Kate and David. I mean, clearly just another manipulation tactic.
I don't know if he's okay with you. I know you're not going to hurt him, but I don't know what you're saying to him.
Look, we will do what is best for Zachary. We will not hurt Zachary, period. You understand?
I know you don't want to, you don't intend to, but if we don't get help, we don't know if we're doing what's best.
Now, you don't like this answer, but I'm going to give it to you again. The reason we go through the lawyers is so that we don't have these meltdowns and emotional scenes. Understood?
Now, I can't consent to more time right now, feeling this way.
Then she started bringing up Andrew more and more, asking about Andrew's childhood, what he was like as a baby, and so on. But Kate and David told Shirley that they would not talk about Andrew with her. Yet she kept trying to bring him up, probably to get a rise out of them. But Kate and David knew that they just had to stay calm. If they exploded on Shirley like they really truly wanted to, they may never get custody of Zachary. On July 18th, 2003, it was Zachary's first birthday. Shirley, who was still free and still hadn't been extradited, ended up holding a party for him at McDonald's. When it was time to open presents, Zachary wasn't really interested, though. I mean, he was 1 year old after all, so the concept of presents wasn't really something that he could grasp. But Shirley really wanted him to open these presents. But instead, he ran over to Kate, and he wanted to be held by her. And this made Shirley furious. She started yelling at Kate that she didn't want Zachary to love Kate more than her, and all these things, just super insecure and, outrageous. And then after that, all she ever did was complain about Kate and David. It seemed like they couldn't do anything right. And on top of that, it didn't even seem like Shirley even wanted to keep Zachary all that much. She just wanted to have custody of him to get back at Kate and David. I mean, again, she had previously abandoned her other 3 kids and once said that they weren't worth her time at all, so was history repeating itself? So finally, another hearing for Shirley's extradition was set for September of 2003. This hearing would likely be the last one before she was finally sent to the United States. But just when things started looking up, they got much, much worse. See, in July, Shirley started dating somebody new. They met in a bar and they had gone on a couple of dates, but the guy broke things off with Shirley when his friends found those news articles talking about her murdering Andrew. However, in typical Shirley fashion, she would not leave this guy alone. She started calling him nonstop, texting him nonstop, and in one message, like Shirley does, she told him that she was pregnant and said he needed to take responsibility as a father and, quote, grow up and be a man. On the night of August 17th, she called a friend and said that she was going to go to this guy's house with Zachary. But on her way there, she got lost, and she stopped to ask somebody for directions. But it was the last time that anyone ever saw her or baby Zachary. By the next day, on August 18th, both of them had just disappeared. They were nowhere to be found. Kate and David couldn't get a hold of Shirley. She wasn't at her house, nobody had seen her, and everyone was freaking out because they thought that Shirley had just made a run for it. A search started almost immediately, but unfortunately, it was too late. 20 minutes away from St. John's, on a beach called Conception Bay, a vacationing couple found the body of an adult woman. And close by, there was the body of a deceased baby boy. Zachary and Kate identified the baby as Zachary, and the adult woman was Shirley. When Zachary was found, he was face up and his eyes were wide open. Police wrapped his body in a blanket and they gently took him away from the area. They purposefully kept his body far away from Shirley's. And an investigation into their deaths found that Shirley had taken a very large dose of Ativan, which is an anti-anxiety medication. It had been prescribed to her by her psychiatrist. Investigators also found a baby bottle near the pier in the bay, and the bottle contained baby formula that had been laced with Ativan. Someone in the area also had reported hearing a crying baby around 2:30 a.m. So they concluded that Shirley had drugged herself, drugged Zachary, then tied him to her chest using a sweater, and jumped off the pier into the ocean. The cause of their deaths was drowning, but it was determined that Zachary was unconscious during all of it and that he didn't suffer, which, thank God. The police found Shirley's car nearby, close to the home of the guy that she had broken up with, the one that she was on her way to see the night before. And the night she had killed herself and Zachary, she had parked her car near his house and had left pictures of herself and Zachary nearby, along with a used tampon. So it was clear to the police that she was trying to blame this man for her and Zachary's deaths. He was cleared, though. He had absolutely no involvement, but it was, again, her trying to be manipulative, control the situation. I'll also note on the side that even though Shirley told this guy that she was pregnant with his baby, an autopsy revealed that that wasn't true. She wasn't pregnant, as if that's surprising, right? So Kate and David had Zachary cremated, just like they did with their son Andrew. They spread his ashes in the areas that meant a lot to Andrew, places where he spent time with his family members and friends. But this was the breaking point for David and Kate, because they had had such a hard time after Andrew died, and Zachary had been the only thing that had kept them going. They hated the fact that they had had to deal with Shirley. They even had discussed kidnapping Zachary and running away with him. However, they realized that if they did, they'd have to pretty much go into hiding for almost their entire lives. Zachary would never be able to see his family or their friends, and they knew that that wouldn't be fair to Zachary. So then, David had even started thinking about killing Shirley. He wasn't going to tell Kate that, though, because he didn't want her to get into any legal trouble for knowing about the murder in advance. He knew that he would be in jail for the rest of his life if he did it, but he found comfort in this plan because it meant that Kate would have full custody of Zachary and Shirley would be out of their lives. Obviously, he decided against the idea because he believed in the legal system, but that system ended up betraying him and Kate because it made no sense that Shirley was not in jail, and it made no sense that Shirley had custody of Zachary. If Judge Welsh hadn't decided to release Shirley from prison, Zachary would still be alive today. So now with Zachary gone, Kate and David were so upset that they decided to end their own lives. They even had a plan all worked out. Luckily, though, they decided not to go through with it. Instead, they decided to use their experience to try and change the laws so that something like this would never happen to anyone ever again. After Zachary's death, there was a press ban on the situation, and Kate and David could go to prison if they held a press conference or addressed the press in any way. However, against the recommendation of their lawyers, Kate and David held a press conference anyway. They didn't care if they got in trouble, they just wanted Zachary's story to be told. In this press conference, they expressed their belief that the ultimate reason that Zachary died was because of a failed justice system. Specifically, they believed that Judge Welsh was the reason Zachary was now dead. And as a result of all of it, Kate and David became huge activists for victims of violent crimes. They even launched a campaign against Shirley's psychiatrist, Dr. John, and they filed a complaint about him to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. I mean, after all, he was the one who paid her bail initially. Dr. John ended up going to court, and they found that he had overstepped in his client-patient relationship with Shirley by paying her bail. There are some implications, too, that they had a sexual relationship, but it has never been confirmed. Either way, though, the court determined that he acted in misconduct, so he was ordered to pay $10,000 and undergo counseling. Kate and David also advocated for a formal review into Zachary's death. A report called the Turner Review and Investigation was released in October of 2006. It was over 500 pages long, and it was written by a child advocate specialist. The conclusion was that Zachary's death could have been prevented, and that it was all the result of a faulty legal system, and that it was substandard child protection practices that caused this. It also stated that Shirley should have never had custody over Zachary. It said that if Shirley hadn't been released on bail, Zachary would still be alive today. 3 years later, in October of 2009, Zachary's bill was introduced into the Canadian House of Commons. The bill changed criminal laws so that they said that courts are not allowed to release someone on bail who has been charged with a violent crime, unless they have a good reason for it, and having kids does not cut it on its own. The bill never would have gotten this far if not for Kate and David, and it was officially signed into law in December of 2010. Andrew's best friend, Kurt, the one who he used to make home movies with, also made a documentary about the entire thing. It's called Dear Zachary. It was originally supposed to be a movie about Andrew that Zachary could watch when he was older, to learn about his father. Kurt started working on it soon after Andrew's death, traveling all over the country to interview people who were close to Andrew. But after Zachary's death, the documentary turned into more of a piece for advocacy. The film premiered in 2008, and it received a lot of positive feedback.
Charismatic.
Opinionated. Really a good storyteller.
He had a presence.
He had the worst possible gas.
It's going to be a great doctor.
Well, the phrase I was going to use had been full of life.
Do you know who that is?
Andrew. Why did Andrew get killed?
I'm an only child, and I'll get around to why this is of any importance whatsoever.
When I had to say, was my son murdered? And take that into your soul. And then to know how cold-bloodedly he was murdered.
He wanted to break up with her. Oh, she said, that's it then. She was dumped again.
Unfortunately, she made it to Canada before they could arrest her. On the afternoon of November 7th, 2001, my sister called to tell me that Dr. Andrew Bagby, my closest friend since the age of 7, had been killed. My name's Kurt, and I'm a filmmaker. Andrew appeared in every movie I made growing up.
Jesus Christ, Kurt, what do you want?
I decided to make a movie, to travel far and wide, to interview everyone who ever knew and loved Andrew.
Kurt, I just got a call from Mrs. Bagby. The abbreviated version is that bitch held a press conference and announced that she's 4 months pregnant with Andrew's baby. They can't prove it until the child's born. If it is true, the Bagbys are going to sue for custody.
She named the little boy Zachary.
Andrew's family and friends have also created 2 scholarships in remembrance of both Zachary and Andrew. The Dr. Andrew David Family Medicine Scholarship is for medical students at La Trobe Hospital, and it has been awarded to nearly 4 dozen students who are practicing family medicine. And the Dr. Andrew and Son Zachary Fund was created to support students at Memorial University. Now, while researching this case, I was truly amazed by Kate and David because literally every awful thing that could have happened to them did. And when things seemed to be looking up for them, they would just get worse. And I think that everything that they did in their fight for Zachary, then their fight for justice for him and for Andrew, it's just so incredibly commendable. They took this terrible situation and they fought to make sure that it would never happen to anyone ever again. Just the amount of resilience and ability to zoom in on what's important and just focus on that. It's absolutely incredible. It's something that I don't know as a parent I would necessarily have the strength to do. So I just think that it is incredibly admirable and they blow me away. They really do. Now, here's my question for you. I want to know, was this case just as frustrating for you as it was for me? Because it feels like so many different people were failed along the way, all at the hands of this, nut job judge. And I say that because, come on, get a grip. Shirley should have been held responsible from the get-go. She should have been in custody. Zachary should have been with his loving grandparents from day one. How did this happen? Whether she had a violent past or not, which, hello, for the record, she did, you still can't let someone like that out on bail because you have the risk of them hurting others and hurting themselves. And that is exactly what happened in this situation. And it seems like she even tried to frame the other new guy for it. It's just beyond deranged. So senseless, so reckless, and God, it's just so disappointing, right? So let me know what you guys think about this case. Let me know what you think the motive was for why Shirley took her own life and her child's. Was it because she didn't want to face the music and be in jail for the rest of her life in the United States? Or was it more so done out of a motive to try to frame this guy in a Gone Girl situation because she was pissed that he broke up with her? What do you think the true motive was? Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Until the next one, stay safe. Bye.